Hello, everybody. It is Monday, January 15th. Welcome to episode 72 of the Old Mage MTG podcast. What are our MTG topics for today? Well, we've got a few. We're going to finish up part 2 of our Ice Age discussion for you. We're going to cover our favorite rares and look over some interesting decks that I found from the Ice Age era. I've also got some more cards to add to my Atogatog Commander build. This is a deck that is just in its earliest stages. It's my second ever Commander deck. I'm going to build it slowly over the course of the year, adding a few cards here and there during the podcast. The streets are talking about my Atogatog build, Alex. People are very excited. I'm getting comments on all the socials. I went out to my favorite bakery here in Columbus the other day. I was walking out with a box full of macarons. Walk out the front door, I make a right turn. Some guy comes in the other direction. He just leans into me. He goes, "Conspiracy." And I go, "What? What? Did he say conspiracy to me?" And then he goes, "Atog." I hear him say Atog. I was very, very confused. I get back to my car. I take out my cell phone. I type in conspiracy MTG. He was suggesting a card to me for my Atog build, Adeckadeck. He must be a fan of the podcast. I totally forgot about conspiracy. You know, this is a card that I think, after I looked it up, I was like, I think you mentioned this card to me a long time ago when we were discussing some cheap rares that we found from other sets we weren't familiar with.
I have to see the card. I can't remember.
I think it'll jog your memory when you see the card. It's a rare from Mercadian Masks. Current market price, $3.53. It was probably on our list of budget rares when we were discussing budget rares. It's a black enchantment, 3 colorless, 2 black. As conspiracy comes into play, you choose a creature type. Creatures you control and creature cards in your graveyard, hand, and library are all of the chosen type.
Nice.
So, when I saw this again, when it was suggested to me by a man on the street who obviously listens to the podcast and whispered conspiracy when he walked past me as I was walking out of the bakery the other day, I thought to myself, one direction I could go with this deck, it is a clan-based deck. It is an Atog focus deck with Atogatog as my commander, but that doesn't mean I just need to pump it full of nothing but Atogs. I could go a direction where I choose there are 12 total Atogs, I believe, in Magic the Gathering. 11 of them, I believe, are old frame. 1 is a new frame.
Oh, that's
Megatog. I think. I could be wrong, but I believe that's the case. Now, if I wanted to go all Atog, I would have to probably go into the modern frame sets, which I'm considering. But another option is stay old frame, build with the old frame Atogs only, and then you could just select value creatures from all different colors that aren't necessarily Atogs, but run cards like Conspiracy and other types of cards to make them Atogs, or to, you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I like that. It's the convoluted combo Alex direction.
You love that kind of shit. But it also adds like an element of surprise to the deck, because I'm playing out all sorts of creatures that aren't Atogs. People think I don't have all sorts of things to sacrifice to my Atog, and all of a sudden I hit him with something like Conspiracy.
Yeah.
There's probably other cards out there like this that do similar things too. Anyways.
Yeah, there are. I'll have to try to remember some.
I might pick up a Conspiracy. If we mention anything today and you think, hey, I need to add that to my collection, you can help support the podcast by purchasing any cardboard from TCG Player via our TCG Player affiliate link. You can find the link in the description of the episode on YouTube. If you got enough cardboard, you're like, I'm done for a while, I don't have anything else I want to add to the collection, you can also help us out for free by hitting the like button, leaving us a comment on YouTube. We always love that. We love the comments, especially. You got any follow-ups, Alex, to last episode?
I don't think so.
I have one very brief follow-up. Our buddy Ryan from Ohio reminded me why else you run Bobble in the red deck. We were talking about red decks. We were talking about Urza's Bobble. Last episode, often people run the Bobble in the red deck. I was like, why do you run the Bobble in the red deck? Well, the red deck's usually very finely tuned maybe people just decided they have 56 cards they want to run in the red deck, and that's about it. So they get up to 60 by adding 4 baubles. It's 0 casting cost. You sacrifice it to draw a card. So it's just kind of like to thin your deck to get to the 56 cards you really want. But he reminded me, this is something that I know already, I totally forgot. Another reason you run the bauble in the red deck is it feeds the Grim Lavamancer. Let me say that again. It feeds the Grim Lavamancer. I think I pronounced that incorrectly. And it also gets Barbarian Ring to threshold faster. So those are two things that are almost always run in the pre-modern red deck. Grim Lavamancer especially being a great card for that deck. It's 1 red, 1/1 creature wizard. Pay 1 red and tap to remove 2 cards in your graveyard from the game. Grim Lavamancer deals 2 damage to target creature or player. So, you got your Barbarian Ring, which you can sack to do damage if you have Threshold. You got your Grim Lavamancer, which remove things from your graveyard. So they're kind of competing against each other. You might not always want to run both, but the Lavamancer especially, I think there's no reason to not run the Lavamancers in your red deck. It's an awesome card. Running the baubles gets the Grim Lavamancer activated even faster. Do that damage right away.
And I got to see Barbarian Ring in action also, and it was pretty cool. Like I was a little skeptical of that card when I first saw it, but I could see how, in like a deck like this, it can get pretty nasty.
Was that also Ryan from Ohio blasting your face off? Yeah. This is the same reason why you run fetch lands like Wooded Foothills and Bloodstained Mire in the red deck, even when you don't have green or black mana.
That's something I have to start doing, like just like putting fetch lands in just for deck thinning when I don't need them.
I do too. I don't have that many fetch lands, so I haven't been building them even in my Moxfield decks, but I could just put them in my Moxfield decks. They're placeholders until I get them. I'm still waiting for those damn things to be reprinted.
Yeah, I know.
And I don't know when they're going to do it because they just keep going back up in price. And
I would like that too, because I have like basically no fetch lands.
I bought one of the 2 cheapest ones. I bought 1 copy of each like a year or so ago to put in my
That's good.
my first ever commander deck. So I have 1 Wooded Foothills, 1 Windswept Heath. It's the red-green one and the white-green one.
You did a much better job of me than a much better job than I did of like going right for different lands to help fix your mana bases and stuff when we started buying cards. I was kind of just like buying all kinds of stuff because it was interesting.
Real estate, Alex.
I know.
Before you can build anything, you need the land to build it upon. The land is expensive.
I got to get to work on some more land.
I'm feeling a little bit bad about putting all the dual lands in my Atog deck, my 5-color Atog deck, because I only have
bother people.
I only have 2 of them.
Oh.
I only own 2 of them. I'm just gonna proxy them. I don't know what I'll do. I might proxy them when I play with you or some other people here that I know well, but
yeah, and you could always just swap those out for pain lands or whatever else instead.
Well, I was gonna put the pain lands in too.
Yeah, kind of.
But I can find alternatives. I can find like the tapped lands. There's lands from Invasion, I think.
I liked trying out those lands where you pay 1 colorless and the land taps for 1 mana each of 2 different colors.
Yeah, filter lands.
Yeah, I enjoyed playing with those recently.
So depending on who I'm playing against, like I don't have to proxy the dual land necessarily. It's an Atog deck, it doesn't need to be super powerful.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's the only follow-up I had to last week when we talked about the bauble. Why do you run the bauble in the red deck? Well, it's not just to thin the deck. It feeds the Lavamancer. It feeds the Barbarian Ring. That brings us to segment 1, Alex. I'm calling segment 1 Ice Age Part 2. Last week, we introduced... short and sweet. Last week, we introduced Ice Age. We talked about some of our favorite commons and uncommons from the set. There were just too many good cards in this set because it's so big to squeeze it all into one episode. So in episode 2, we're going to bring you the rares. I pulled up the rares from Ice Age on MTG stocks. I sorted by market price. I'm not necessarily going to discuss them in order of market price, most expensive to least expensive, but that's kind of how it worked out. I was putting the list together. I'm going to start with the big boy, the most expensive card from Ice Age. I do have one copy, not to brag. That is Necropotence. I have an original Ice Age Necropotence, not to brag.
That's like mine's fifth. I have a fifth edition one. It's lame.
This is Necropotence from Ice Age. I don't have much to say about this card that hasn't already been said. I did notice that the Oracle text on Gather had been updated slightly. So I'm going to read the original. It is 3 black enchantment. You skip your draw phase. If you discard a card from your hand, remove that card from the game. So it sits over here. Then pay 0 colorless, pay 1 life to set aside the top card of your library. At the beginning of your next discard phase, you put that card into your hand. Effects that prevent or redirect damage cannot be used to counter this loss of life. So essentially, you don't draw cards anymore during your draw phase. Instead, you pay 1 life to draw the card. But you don't get it right away. It sits to the side, and it comes into your hand at the beginning of your next discard phase. So essentially at the end of your turn, if I'm remembering all the phases correctly.
Yes, yeah, you basically have to like skip a turn to set this up going. But you get to draw more than 1 card at a time if you want to pay more life.
Yes. So you don't draw your normal card, but you exchange life for cards. I got to pull up. I forgot to pull up. They should make a new card called Necropotence. I forgot to pull up Gatherer.
Necropulence as well.
That'd be a good one. Here's the Oracle text now. It's shorter and sweeter. Skip your draw step. Whenever you discard a card, exile that card from your graveyard.
Okay, so it still goes to the graveyard and now it gets exiled.
Yeah, it just doesn't say remove that card from the game anymore.
That's actually, I mean, that seems like that's a positive move to make the card stronger. Because if you do things with like enter the graveyard effects, now they would still work.
Yeah.
I don't know how many cards there are like that.
I don't either. Then it says pay 1 life, exile the top card of your library face down, put that card into your hand at the beginning of your next end step. So they just change all the stuff about like removing the cards from the game with exile. I don't know how critical that is, but it might be important for some reason.
I mean, honestly, I don't think so, because they've done that with pretty much every old card. You know, anything that said removed from the game now says exile pretty much.
Oh, what else did I notice? Here's what I was really thinking about when I was reading the change, the Oracle change. Why did they eliminate the last line? So the last line used to say, effects that prevent or redirect damage cannot be used to counter this loss of life. It no longer says that, but you still can't counter the loss of life, I don't think. Is it just that it's now a given?
Yeah, I think
damage and loss of life are not the same thing, so they just feel like they don't have to explain it.
They put that on lots of old cards, you know, that clause.
Yeah.
And this was probably about the time when they stopped using it, you know, when they were just like, okay, damage and loss of life, like we'll explain it in the instruction manual.
Yeah, so that's what I think is going on here. There's no like material changes to the effects of the card. They just made it short and sweet. They got rid of the unnecessary explanations.
Yeah.
Gatherer rating 4.909. This might be the highest Gatherer rating I've ever come across. Current market price of Necropotence is $19.55. It's well off of its stupid COVID spike, which got upwards of $60. If this trend continues, we might see it back to its pre-2020 price of under $10. I would really like that, and then I could have more than one Ice Age Necropotence. When I was looking around at Ice Age cards, I found this article written by one Mark Rosewater titled Ice Guys Finish First. This is from 2004. Jesus, so 20 years ago now. Where Mara went through his favorite card designs in Ice Age. This was his #1 card design in Ice Age. So I'm skipping all the way to the top of the list. Necropotence. I was kind of surprised by that because it's obviously an awesome card, an extremely influential card, but it's also like notoriously overpowered and often banned. So I was
Yeah.
kind of surprised that the #1 card design would be the card that like turned out to be a problem.
Yeah, that is interesting. What I what I think it has going for it in that category is that it definitely kind of like broke the seal on cards of this type and like set the tone for cards that do similar things to this in like later sets.
Mhm.
I like, by the way, this is off topic, but I like the art on the Wilds of Eldraine one.
It is pretty cool, yeah.
It's not, there's two different ones. The one with the lady isn't the one I'm looking at, but it's the one that just has like the skull with the hand on it.
Is it the Enchanting Tales? This is not what I'm looking for.
Yeah, they both say Enchanting Tales. I'm not sure this one
Okay.
is, it's not that one. You have to
Maybe I
look it up
can't.
on MTG or on
MTG
MTG
stocks.
stocks for some reason.
I know what you're talking about. It's the one that reminds me of Disney art.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, these are really cheap too. Oh, okay. No, these ones are a little bit more expensive. $10.
Yeah, that
This
one.
one.
Yeah, those ones at the top were just art cards, I think.
Yeah. That is quite cool.
Yeah, I wouldn't hate playing this instead of, like the whiteboarded 5th edition.
Yeah. Necro, if you remember, you probably remember this. It wasn't the first black enchantment that trades life for cards. Greed came before.
Okay.
But this did it with some more complexity. So Morrow talks about the complexity of Necropotence in this article.
Greed was from Legends?
Greed was from Legends, yeah. It was pay 2 life. I believe it was very simple, short and sweet. Pay 2 life, draw 1 card.
And 1 black mana, pay 1 black, pay 2
Yes.
life, draw a
Yes,
card.
that's right.
And it costs black 3 to cast.
Pay 2 life, draw a card. This is the internet's favorite card to tweet at official Wizards of the Coast accounts.
Oh, clever. Because
Every
we
time
printed
they
in Commander 2021 and
yeah,
Modern Horizons 2.
2013, 2021, Modern Horizons 2. It has some secret layer drops.
Oh, Secret Lair 2.
And every time Wizards of the Coast gets up to some bullshit, people like to send them this card. Morrow says some things about Necropotence and the complexity of it in this article. Why wait for the end of the turn? Let's just let the players draw the cards immediately. That would be less wordy, right? Big mistake, exclamation point, he says. That delay is crucial for a number of reasons. First, it adds a more complex set of play decisions. When you get the cards right away, the answer is to simply draw until you get the card you want or are unable to draw more. With Necropotence, you have only one chance to gauge how many cards you need. You must face the future and the unknown. You must understand the game state to properly deduce how much you need and how much you can afford or often have to risk. So that is a good point, actually. It does make the game more complex to have to set the cards aside and not
Yeah, you have
actually
to
get them till the end as opposed to
guess how
just
many
pulling.
cards you think you need. Yeah.
You have to really think about the board state. What is in your deck? How many cards you have left over? Potentially, what's in your opponent's deck? How many cards they have left
And
over?
it's cool that they use that as a way to like temper the strength of the card because it doesn't seem like the obvious choice necessarily. They might have just made it
Yeah,
like
it doesn't.
cost more life to use or cost mana also like Greed did.
Like Greed, yeah.
Yeah.
A different set of drawbacks. They gave it a different set of drawbacks than Greed, which did make it more complex to play. We've talked about Necro multiple times in the podcast. I've often said how I never really played it. I was too protective of my life total back then as a 13-year-old. I was far more likely to run a card like Reverse Damage that on occasion would maybe give me life and maybe sort of help me out, but never actually win me a game than I was
That's
to
funny
run
because I remember you playing that.
Necropotence.
I didn't remember, but then when you brought it up, I remembered that you did used to play it. I think it did win you some games too, because
On occasion, but
I played a fair amount of like heat decks and stuff back then,
yeah,
like red, blue and stuff. And I remember you reverse damaging me when I was trying to kill you.
it's not going to help you run through a tournament though. But I do have like out of the old rares that I kept from back in the day, I still have my original reverse damage, and it is one of the cards that I own that is like beat to shit. My revised reverse damage got shuffled up many times. It's heavy play.
Yeah, my like regrowth
Yeah.
and soul ring are both like
Yeah, I have beat to shit regrowth too. I've also generally shied away from like black heavy builds, and here you're talking about something that's 3 black to play, so you're probably going to be playing mono black or heavy black. It just wasn't a color that I played with much, but I do want to build a Necro deck now, but it's banned in pre-modern, which is my main format. However, I don't know if you know this, Alex, it is not banned in middle school.
all right.
What is middle school, you might ask me? So I'm on the eternalcentral.com website, eternalcentral.com, where they talk about a format called middle school, and they go through the rules of middle school. Do you know middle school, Alex? Are you
I've
familiar
heard
with
of
this
it,
at all?
and I mean I know it now because
Yeah.
since you brought it up in the notes, but
It's very similar to pre-modern. The legal sets are 4th edition through Scourge, same as pre-modern. There's some additional sets that are allowed. Pro Tour collector editions, Battle Royale box sets,
okay. The
World
promo
Champion
stuff from that time.
World Championship decks. These are legal in pre-modern too. Deckmasters Garfield versus Finkel. I think these are also legal in pre-modern because I think they're just all cards from pre-modern sets. But yeah, this is a major difference. Book promo cards, Arena, Sewers of Estark, Nalathni Dragon, Giant Badger, Windseeker Centaur, Mana Crypt is banned for power reasons. I don't think any of these are legal in pre-modern. I could be misspeaking. It's also possible that just nobody ever plays them, but I don't think that they're legal. What else do I want to say? Oh, there are some differences in the rule set in middle school that I actually do like a lot. Mana burn happens, which I like having mana burn still. I think there are some cards that are just already so powerful, and if you eliminate mana burn, they just make them too powerful. So I like mana burn. The Judgment Wish Cycle works how it was originally designed. There were some M10 rule changes that changed the way the Wish Cycle works. These use the original rules for the Wish Cycle. And also damage uses the stack. So you can do Mog Fanatic shit in middle school that you can't do in pre-modern. You can do Morphling shit. You can do Triskelion shit in middle school. And Necro isn't banned. So like pre-modern, they don't have a restricted list. They just have a banned list. This is the banned list for middle school. It's pretty small.
Dark
And
Ritual.
there's no Necropotence on it. What they did though is they banned Dark Ritual, so there's no first turn Necro any longer.
Ah, okay.
That's kind of there might be other reasons that they banned Dark Ritual, but if you were to ask me what would be the main reason to ban Dark Ritual from this era, if you were to do so, I think it would be to prevent first turn Necro, Dark Ritual Necro. Because what else do you do? Dark Ritual Hippie? That's not too powerful. That's awesome, but it's not too powerful. There's too many ways to get rid of a turn 1 hippie.
And I'm looking, you still have like Yawgmoth's Bargain and Yawgmoth's Will are banned. So like I was gonna say it could be to, facilitate some cards like that, but like uh since Necro's legal in the set, I think you're probably right.
So I think I am going to eventually put together a Necro deck, and that will be my middle school deck. I'm going to build a middle school deck that's going to be Necro because that's where I can play Necro. And Alex said I'm going to make you make a middle school deck so that I can play my Necro deck.
All right.
You making a Necro deck too?
Mind Twist banned in here too. There's a lot of black getting the banhammer.
Yeah. So that is the first rare that we're going to discuss from Ice Age today, Necro. Probably the most powerful rare. One of the most powerful rares in the history of Magic the Gathering. Next, what do I have for you, Alex? Next, I'm going to talk about a group of cards. The Pain Lands. When I think about the Pain Lands, Alex, a quote comes to mind. That quote is, "Comparison is the thief of joy," by Michael Scott. Michael Scott said that. The Pain Lands, there are 5 Pain Lands. Everybody knows these. They're also the next 4 of those 5 are the next 4 most expensive cards in Ice Age, and then you got little brush lands
It's
all,
funny.
all the way down here somewhere. I think I might
No,
have
you
passed
just
it.
passed it. It was up a little
I
higher,
just
but
passed it. Okay. Brushlands down here, right between Pox and Altar Bones.
no love for that, huh?
Green white never gets any respect. Savannahs don't get respect. Brushlands get no respect.
Surely, though, people play a tricolor with white and green, though, that would get more respect, right?
Sometimes, yeah.
It's not.
Sulphur Springs, Edakar Waste, Underground River, Carplusan Forest, and Brushlands. These are dual lands that you can tap for one colorless mana, or you can tap for allied colored mana and take one damage. Why do I say comparison is the thief of joy? Because I despised these cards when I first opened them in Ice Age. I was like, why would I ever play this shit? We didn't really play type 2. We weren't like competitive players. So for the most part, we kind of played with whatever we had. Like
Yeah.
we built
At
decks
least
out of,
especially very early on.
yeah, we built decks out of what we had at the time. We didn't do a lot of like drafting or like type 2 specific brewing where we're like, okay, you guys aren't allowed to use your dual lands when you build decks today.
Yeah.
We're going to have a dedicated type 2 play. We didn't really do that. So I just thought, like, I dual lands, I can get however many I want whenever I want. I was filthy with dual lands. They were just everywhere. Uh, why would I take a damage? Why would I
Yeah.
run a Sulphur Springs? But now that I've gotten back into Magic, dual lands are too expensive, and I play pre-modern where they're not even legal. I love the pain lands. I'm loving
Oh,
those.
yeah, yeah. They're way better now. Or not, I shouldn't say now, but I think of them much more highly now.
Yes.
Another factor there too is that like this came right after Fallen Empires, which we all know about Fallen Empires, and it had a couple wonky lands in it that weren't great, and it was the same sort of thing with them. It was like, oh, these are just like poor substitutes for like dual lands or for other ways to mana ramp. Some of those ones that like stored up mana counters on them, right? And then like you sacrificed them.
Acacian Store.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I get mad thinking about it.
So like we had just seen those and we're like, oh man, like dual land, like fate, like dual lands that aren't as good. And then Ice Age came out. It seemed like that's what they were doing again.
I will say that they are far cheaper than they were when I bought in late 2022, early 2023 when I was building up my pre-modern mana base. This
Yeah, they're pretty
Underground Sea,
affordable
current
now.
market price of $8.93. I mean, it was over $15. They've come down about 50%, pretty much all of them. So now's not a bad time to pick up your original Ice Age pain lands if you want to. You can also get cheaper versions because they've been reprinted many, many times. I do really appreciate these cards now. They're very well balanced. I think they're like a happy medium between City of Brass and dual lands. I think
I
they're
like everything
exactly
like you have the option of tapping for a colorless without paying the
yeah.
penalty. That's nice.
It wasn't that great that we had to wait so long for the enemy colors. When we got back into Magic 2022, I found out about Apocalypse and saw that they finally printed the enemy color dual lands or pain lands. So that was nice. It wasn't so great that we had to wait so long for those. These cards come in at number 2 on Maro's list of best designed cards in Ice Age. Probably for balance reasons. I do, like I said, think they're very well balanced.
Yeah,
they're
I agree.
right in the middle of dual lands and City of Brass. Next rare, Alex. This rare, one of the top 10 most expensive cards in Ice Age, which means it's still under $10. Current market price $6.92. It is Illusions of Grandeur. This is a card that I have my original copy of from when I pulled it out of an Ice Age booster pack.
Me too.
And
Me
it
too.
just sat in my box. It's
Yep.
been sitting in my box for 25 years.
I can remember one or two people trying to work out some janky combos with this back in the day. Yeah. But that was it. There was like, you weren't really going to use this unless you were trying to do something kind of tricky. And like you pointed out, we didn't have what is it, donate?
Yep.
Back then to, force an opponent to take control of one of our permanents with a bad cost.
Unless you can do something weird like that, this is a very unusual card to try to play around. It is 3 colorless, 1 blue enchantment, cumulative upkeep of 2 colorless, which is tough to keep up with. When Illusions of Grandeur comes into play, you gain 20 life. When Illusions of Grandeur leaves play, you lose 20 life. Effects that prevent or redirect damage cannot be used to counter this life. You mentioned Donate. It became quite popular in Tricks decks, but that had to wait for Urza's Destiny to be printed in the
Yeah.
arrival of Donate.
And I
What
sorry.
were you going to say?
I was gonna say I can't remember exactly how I saw people try to use this, but I'm sort of thinking it was something maybe like channel, where they could pump up their life total so that they could use that life to turn it into mana
That could be a thing, yeah.
and kill their opponent. Uh, because as a stall technique, it's just awful. Like you put off death, but you've completely locked yourself down with the mana cost. You know what I mean? Unless you can do something like the next turn, you're just going to be tapped out trying to
You,
keep the illusions of grandeur up.
yeah, you need to do something pretty much right away.
Yeah.
Tricks decks, I've never played against a Tricks deck because we quit before Urza's Destiny was printed. But the idea is, now what's happening here? The idea is you donate your Illusions of Grandeur.
Yeah.
So you play Illusions of Grandeur, you gain 20 life, you use Donate, which is this card right here. A sorcery from Urza's Destiny, 2 colorless, 1 blue. Target player gains control of target permanent you control. So you use Donate to transfer the Illusions of Grandeur to opponent, and then they lose 20 life when they can no longer pay the cumulative upkeep of 2 colorless. And the rest of this deck, here's an example of a deck. Tricks, Scott McCord from Grand Prix Philadelphia 2000. The rest of the deck is just typically composed of cards to search for and protect
Tutor
that
stuff.
Donate Illusions of Grandeur combo. He also has 4 Necro in here too to draw that shit that he
It's
needs.
like draw, tutor, and counters.
Demonic
basically.
Consultation, Brainstorm, and then
Which makes sense because
tutors.
like that combo is really all you need.
That's it. That's the
it's
whole
a
thing.
single win combo. So you may as well just build hard around it.
But until then, until Donate was printed, I mean, Illusions of Grandeur just sat around in cardboard boxes all around the world, just waiting for a use. Next card I wanted to talk about. The next card was something that got used right away. It was the Chase Rare in Ice Age.
Sure was.
It was Jester's Cap.
This is the one everyone wanted, and it was expensive right off the bat. I feel like when Ice Age came out, this card was like $30, $25. Like
I was going to say 20 something. Yeah. I feel like from that era, when the new hot card would come out, it was like a 20 to $30 card. I think that's where they got to. I don't remember any cards ever being like $50 right out of boosters. Is that
not
the case?
that I can remember.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think about Vampiric Tutor, but I don't know if Vampiric Tutor was as like expensive right when it came out.
I don't think it was. At least it wasn't desired by me because I was like, I have fucking demonic too.
Yeah,
comes right to my hand. I know it's 2 mana.
That card got more expensive over time, I think, because so many people were trying to put it in decks and it didn't have enough reprints for a while.
Yeah. Read the card. It's 4 colorless artifact. You pay 2 colorless, tap it, sacrifice Jester's Cap to look through target player's library and remove any 3 of those cards from the game. You reshuffle the library afterwards. Everybody's already mentioned this, but it was extremely novel to be able to go through your opponent's deck. That's what made this card so exciting. Not only could you remove any type of threat you wanted, you could neuter and destroy combos, but you could also review their deck and figure out their strategy.
Yeah. And it's just fun to do that to people,
It's fun. Especially
the morale of the game.
Especially Magic the Gathering, people who are like very particular about their cards.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, don't be so rough with it. And you're smudging things around. You're dropping stuff on purpose to get in their brains, to get in their heads, to throw them off.
Yeah. I know I've said it before, but I always liked Word of Command. I know it's a little awkward, and now the way the rules work, it's not as good. But that ability to like use one of my opponent's cards like in their deck against them or in their hand, like it's just fun.
It's fun. But this card is slow. It's rarely played. but still very fun. I think it makes a nice addition to any casual kitchen table deck. It is a major player in a deck I'm working on that is called Cheeto Fingers. I will eat Cheetos and or pizza every time I play this deck. I will play it against you, Alex. I will play Cheeto Fingers, the deck when we have no sleeve nights. When we get together, nobody's allowed to play sleeves. I play Cheeto Fingers. I eat Cheetos. I eat pizza. It comes in at number 8 on Mara's list of best designed cards in Ice Age. Is that right?
Yeah, sure.
Let me look real quick. Because the next one I'm going to talk about is Joko Hops, and I wrote down that Joko Hops comes in at number 8 too. They can't both be number 8. Okay, then I'm wrong. Joko Hops is number 4. Let me go up to number 8 real quick. I got to get this right. I can't screw this
Giving
up.
away all the other cards.
Jester's Cap, number 8. I'm not giving away all the. I'm not going to just go through Morrow's list. I made my own list, and then I found this article. There's a lot of overlap because, of course, the cool cards that I think are, of course, the cards I think are cool are also many of the cards that Morrow thinks are great. But that's Jester's Cap, Star of Cheeto Fingers, next big card from Ice Age. A card that I always liked but never really played. Another card that we've talked about quite a bit on the podcast. These big board wipes I've never really played that much, but I've always liked them. I don't have any Nevinril's discs from back in the day, even though I always liked the disc. The board wipes that I played were pretty much just creature or land specific board wipes. My Wraths and my Geddons.
Mm-hmm.
This one is Joko Hops.
A little, but never with Joko Hops.
It is 4 colorless, 2 red, so it's very expensive mana-wise. Sorcery, bury all artifacts, creatures, and lands. It has a rating on Gatherer of 4.519.
Wow.
Current market price of $6.11. This is just a steady compounder, Alex. I like to, when I compare Magic cards to stocks and I see lines like this, I like to call them, this is the Johnson & Johnson of Ice Age, maybe.
It's reserve list?
No. If it was reserve list, it'd probably be going up higher. It's been reprinted multiple times.
Oh, okay.
I guess it's been a while, though. Not since 5th and 6th edition.
Okay.
I think they have other board wipes that they like to print these days that are similar in a lot of ways. But
yeah.
It is a great spell for a color that often wants to empty its hand and then sometimes runs out of gas. For red, put this in red, you throw all your bolts on the ground, you throw all your goblins on the ground, and then you're just playing off the draw. Maybe your opponent is putting out big creatures that all of a sudden all your 1-drops and 2-drops can't deal with. You could just Joko Hops, reset.
Yeah.
I like it. I never play it because it's 6 mana. Maybe I should.
I think the big thing that worries, I mean, this casting cost, but the big thing that worries me about this is like, you have to make sure that when you do that wipe, your opponent doesn't have a way to accelerate faster than you afterwards. You know what I mean?
This is the thing with board wipes. Yeah, you have to have a deck that can at least sometimes benefit more than the average opposing deck from a board wipe. And then even then, you still have to be careful about when you play the board wipe.
And the way you're using this probably in red, you probably don't have a lot of card draw strategy.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Maybe you do, but
probably not. At least back in the day, there's not a lot of card draw. I mean,
it also doesn't affect enchantments, so you could load up on enchantments in a deck like this.
Yep.
Use a lot of those red enchantments that give haste and do things like that.
So take what is usually red's weakness, removal of enchantments, and just try to build an enchantment heavy deck so it's not really a weakness for you when you run Joko Hops.
Yeah.
Red doesn't have a lot of way to deal with enchantments. The Nevinril's disc does deal with enchantments. Joko Hops, like many red spells, does not. I don't know what red has to deal with enchantments. By the way,
the first card I ever remember people like that was really early on in our Magic playing career, I remember one or two people immediately going for that and making like a board wipe deck, and I thought it was pretty clever and interesting.
Disc decks are good. They're classics.
Is not the strategy I would have like when I first saw Individual's disc, like in 8th grade, and I looked at it, I was like, what? Why would you do that? You know?
I never did. I don't think I've ever played the disc. I like targeted removal or semi-targeted removal. Like I said, I run Wraths, I run Geddons.
Yeah. It seemed more like a chaos card to me, I guess. I wasn't really expecting people to like, I don't know, use it as a controlled wipe in that way. You know, I wasn't that far into Magic.
Number 7 on Maro's list of best designed cards in Ice Age, we have Pox. Pox is another 3 black casting cost rare from Ice Age. It has lovely art. It is a sorcery.
I like this art.
It has a lot of words.
It looks
Each
like
player loses 1/3 of his or her life, then chooses and discards 1/3 of the cards in his or her hand, then sacrifices 1/3 of the creatures he or she controls, and then finally sacrifices 1/3 of the lands he or she controls. Round each loss up. Effects that prevent or redirect damage cannot be used to counter this loss of life. So everything you have, get rid of 1/3 of it. And everybody does that. It has a gather rating of 4.378, current market price of $5.22. It had a big spike in 2021. All of a sudden, people are like, oh my God, I need Pox. I need Pox. It goes from $4 to $20. And then everyone is like, no, I don't need Pox. And it just comes down for the next few years. And it'll probably keep coming down. There are some long gatherer rulings on Pox. This shit can get complex. Each part of Pox's effect is processed separately. So this is kind of interesting. Like you go through each of these things separately for each
Which makes
part.
sense, because that's the way it's written. It's like then
they
do this.
It does say that. For each part, first the player whose turn it is makes all the necessary choices, such as which cards to discard. Then the other player in turn order chooses. Then the actions happen at the same time. Then Pox's effects move to the next stage. So player 1 makes their decisions, player 2 makes then their decisions. Then everything happens at the same time. Then you go to the next part.
Okay.
The number you need to lose, discard, or sacrifice is not calculated until it's time to perform that part of the effect. For example, if your opponent casts Pox and you discard Dodecapod, I don't know what that is, as part of Pox's discard effect, Dodecapod will be put onto the battlefield instead of into your graveyard, so it must be a card that when you discard goes straight into play. Then when determining how many creatures you need to sacrifice, the Dodecapod is taken into account.
Yeah,
so you could get clever in the way you build a deck where cards that you run in your deck synergize with the first effects of Pox. So you do the thing and then it actually helps you out for the later stages.
Stuff that triggers when your life gets below a certain point or when you discard cards or that's interesting. I'd like to try to play with this. I think it'd be fun to, especially in black, stuff you're discarding might be good to discard.
Yeah. People do brew around Pox. It's kind of like a cult card. I've never brewed a Pox deck. I've never faced a Pox deck. But, because of these complexities and because of the order in which these things occur and because you can run other cards that when you sacrifice them to the first parts of the card are actually beneficial to the later steps of the card,
Yeah.
I'm rambling here, but you get what I'm saying.
No, I'm with you. And it all seems to jive with the wording on the card, the way you like go through it and try to make sense of it. That's what these rulings seem to, clarify. Seems like it's working the way it's supposed to.
I never played it, but it is interesting, and I always liked looking at it because the art is weird, and creepy. The effects are unusual. Mara has a few things to say about it. He says it shares the quality that I like about Zur's weirding, and that it cries to have a deck built around it, but doesn't it tell you exactly what to do with it? Third, it oozes black, and let's face it, for cool flavor, no one touches black. So it is a very black card. And yeah, there are definitely ways to build around it. But, as I'm rambling right now, I haven't figured out exactly how to build around it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
you can build around it. But to figure out how exactly you want to build around it, you got to sit down with a list of cards and be like, okay, exactly what do I do here? What do I run? It's not entirely clear, but you can do something with this shit. Next card. This is another card. I always really enjoyed the art from this card. Unfortunately, it was painted by perhaps Magic the Gathering's #1 white supremacist artist that they no longer work with. I'm not really sure.
Oh.
Internal server error.
Oh, that happened to me earlier.
MTG stocks again.
Jamed.
We're trying to run a show here. Enduring renewal. This is 2 colors, 2 white enchantment. You play with the cards in your hand face up on the table. If you draw a creature card from your library, you discard it. Whenever a creature goes to your graveyard from play, put that creature into your hand.
Yeah, again, this makes me want to brew around it when I read it. I'm like, oh, I can do something fun.
Every creature you draw goes into your graveyard. Whenever a creature from play is sent to your graveyard, you put it back into your hand, so they keep coming back. Gather score of 4.102, current market price of $2, so it's very, very affordable. There are a number of rulings for this card on Gather as well. The last one is what struck me. I said, what the hell is with this last ruling on Gather? It's written in such an unusual way. It sounds like somebody just hacked the site and just added this. Unless something, this is a ruling from September 25th, 2006. It's written on Gather in the ruling section of the site. Unless something weird happens, the card you draw as a result of the second ability will be the card you reveal. Unless something weird happens.
Every once in a while, there's a ruling like this that has some just like not very technical sounding language that's kind of funny.
You don't want to get more specific there. This is a Magic the Gathering ruling, like from the rulebook. Unless something weird happens, you do this.
Like an owl flies into the tournament hall.
You got to be more specific.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what to say about that.
Definitely not the best thing to do with this card, but I just want to recast Ball Lightning.
I think what they mean is unless some effect unless some other effect like interrupts that like draw or substitutes a card for the draw or something like that.
I get it. But you can't just make a rule. You can't have a ruling start with unless something weird happens, because that's definitely open to interpretation. Right?
Yeah.
I could just do something weird.
Right.
And then be like, well, hold on a second, something weird just happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me consult the gatherer text. I'm right, something weird happened. So we don't have to worry about that now,
Yeah.
You compare this with creature sacrifice outlets. Sacking creatures, put them in the graveyard, they come back to your hand. They make cards that turn your lands into creatures way less scary, because you can always get the lands back if your opponent blows them all away. So there's lots of cards that like turn all your lands into creatures. And I'm always like, oh shit, I don't want to do that. Like I like these cards, but I never want to cast them because I don't want to get them all like blown off the board.
So does it work though? Because like the creature, like when the creature hits your graveyard, it's still a creature, but then it turns back into a land. So like I guess they're saying this is still a creature at that point, and it would go back to your hand even though it's like a forest.
This is how I'm understanding it. I could be totally wrong. That's just something that I came up with. Oh, turn your lands into creatures. Maybe
it's a good idea. Yeah, I'm just wondering how it plays out with the rules.
I think I'm right. If anybody's listening and knows that I'm not right, let me know. You can maybe pair this with Goblin Bombardment. Maybe pair Enduring Renewal and Goblin Bombardment with 0 casting cost artifact creatures. Maybe do that like Kai Bude did in 1999 in his Fruity Pebbles deck. I can't remember exactly how to pronounce his name, but I think it's Kai Bude.
This got me excited.
I knew it would. That's why I brought it up.
Yeah.
Fruity Pebbles, Kai Bude, Pro Tour, Chicago 1999. Fruity Pebbles and Cocoa Pebbles are both multicolored combo decks. The only key difference being Cocoa Pebbles uses Necropotence, but Fruity Pebbles used to rely on blue card searching and counter magic. The deck wins by putting together a Goblin Bombardment and Enduring Renewal with a creature with 0 casting costs, such as Shield Sphere, Phyrexian Walker. You could also do the OG Ornithopter. The creature would be sacrificed to the bombardment. Renewal will return it to the hand where it could be cast again for 0, repeating this until the opponent would drop dead. Very cool decks.
I thought it was interesting how they chose Drop Dead.
That's another
dramatic.
Same person who wrote the last ruling for Enduring Renewal on Gatherer wrote this MTG wiki.
Yeah. This got me excited. This is a great combo, nice engine. I keep forgetting the Goblin Bombardment works on any creature, even though I'm sure I've talked about that on the podcast with you before.
You always think it just works on goblins. It's anything,
Yeah, I have to start putting that in just like all kinds of decks.
I've said it many times on this podcast. Goblin Bombardment has to be. I think it's better than. I think it should be played more. It seems better than. I mean, I think everybody thinks it's good, but it just doesn't get played as much as it should for a card that seems to be as good as it is to me.
Yeah.
But what do I know?
No, I agree.
And this would be not an expensive deck to put together. I should mess around with this archetype. Goblin Bombardment, Enduring Renewal, and see how good I can make it. I mean, this deck I'm looking at right now is an extended deck, so it has dual lands, which will get expensive. But you could build this in the pre-modern format, and I think you could build it pretty cheap.
I mean, I'm wondering, like, Enduring Renewal is great, but you could also just do this like without the white probably, and with black, and you could play like Oversold Cemetery.
I can't remember. I always forget exactly what that card does, but yeah, you could just build a Goblin Bombardment deck without Enduring Renewal.
Okay, so I guess the problem is with something like Oversold Cemetery, you wouldn't be able to use like several times in a row. It would just be more like kind of like a once per turn sort of thing. Because it lets you pull a creature from your graveyard once per turn if there's at least 4 creatures in your graveyard.
Okay, so it's just one.
So the Enduring Renewal allows you to keep doing it. But I don't know, you might not need that. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Oversold Cemetery will just allow you to bring one of them back per turn. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah.
That's way worse.
Yeah.
I feel like that's way worse. You might not. I mean, the Enduring Renewal might be overkill, but yeah, being able to get multiple 0 casting cost creatures back every turn to potentially do 2, 3, 4 damage a turn to any target is way different than just getting one back to do 1 damage to a target.
That would be maybe more for like. Oh no, never mind. Okay, Bombardment's always only 1 damage. Never mind. Okay.
1 damage to any target. So that's we're doing Enduring Renewal. That's Fruity Pebbles. I got a couple creatures from Ice Age I want to talk about though. These 2 creatures, I was flipping through some podcasts the other day. I happened across the new episode of the Command Zone, and they talked about the most powerful old school commanders. That was the theme of this past week's episode. I had to click that shit, Alex. Old frame commanders getting talked about on the Command Zone. 2 of them were from Ice Age. I already wanted to talk about one of them today, so let's get right to it. I wanted to talk about Marton Stromgall.
Yeah.
A rare from Ice Age.
I like him.
Gather rating of 3.965. Current market price is $7.03. I think this guy will get cheaper. He was way cheaper. Spiked, came down.
Yeah.
Spiked up again, came down. But it
keeps making spike of 1990s cards.
Keeps making lower highs, Alex, lower highs. So it's coming down even more. It's 2 colorless, 2 red, summon legend. So he can be your commander. 1/1. If Marton Stromgall attacks, all other attacking creatures get plus star until end of turn, where star is equal to the number of other attacking creatures. If Marton blocks, all other blocking creatures get plus star until end of turn, where star is equal to number of other blocking creatures. So he remains a 1/1, but everybody else on your board, if he attacks or blocks, gets plus for every other creature on the board if they attack or block.
Yeah.
Never played this guy before, but he's not a bad general.
I always
Or
kind of
commander
wanted
deck.
to. This is more fun and interesting to me than like Balduvian hordes,
Yes,
you know?
most definitely. I did build about Balduvian hordes
Oh,
deck.
was that was alliances, right?
It was alliances, yeah. I have not played the Balduvian hordes deck against you because it is terrible, and I'm not expecting to be able to make a good one. But it's like even worse, and I feel like I should be able to get it. People been not people. Everybody else gave up. Not everybody else. There's probably like 2 other guys like me who haven't given up on Balduvian hordes yet. But it's been a struggle.
Yeah. I like your idea about
Anyways,
using reconnaissance with this, though.
yeah. So what I was going to say is, he's a good general not only for commander deck, but just in a general weenie deck. One big attack is all you need. So you run maybe a red-white weenie deck,
Works, yeah.
and maybe the white weenie creatures you choose are Sultari creatures with shadow. All you need is one big attack. You get all those shadow creatures pumped. 4 shadow creatures on the board, 3 shadow creatures on the board, all pumped and all getting through in one attack.
Yeah, that's a good idea to use white shadow creatures with it.
A lot of damage. What if he's blocked? In your white weenie deck with Martin Stromgald, you could also run reconnaissance. So you could pull him out of combat if somebody tries to block. Will that still work? Because he technically attacked.
Wait, I'm sorry. Say your question again.
Can you pull him out if you have Martin? Let's say you have Martin Stromgald on the board.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
3 other creatures.
Does that boost persist if he is removed from combat?
Does the boost persist? Could you time it so the other attacking creatures still get the pluses, but Martin Stromgald is pulled out of combat before the damage is dealt?
I think so, because
you definitely could in middle school because damage is on the stack. So I don't know. I don't have to worry about that.
There's no rulings for starters on here, but there's new card text. It looks like. Wait, maybe not. Maybe it's still the same text. Whenever he attacks, other attacking creatures get +1/+1 until end of turn. So I feel like when he attacks, that
then it's
counts and checks and applies. Right?
That's what I would think. That's what I would think. Somebody tell me if I'm wrong, but that's what I would think. So I would run a reconnaissance this fella. If you don't remember what reconnaissance is, I think I'm pretty good at this, but I have to get better. I like to say exactly what the card does when I mention a card. Because we are not an advanced Magic the Gathering podcast here. I listen to plenty of other Magic the Gathering podcasts with like former pro players and people who are really, really good, and they're just spitting out card names left and right, talking about high level strategies. And the people who listen to them probably already know what a lot of this stuff does. But we're kind of we've been in the game for a long time, but also out of the game for a long time, so we're practically beginners. So I like to go over exactly what the cards do when we mention them. Reconnaissance, 1 white enchantment, pay 0, remove target attacking creature you control from combat and untap it. So the idea is, attack with Marton and everything else, then remove Marton from combat once everything else gets the pluses. And then that way you could potentially reuse him. Because most of the time when you attack with Marton, he's gonna be dead.
Yeah, and definitely
attack or block, he's gonna be dead. He's just a 1/1.
Like he's not good for the blocking half of the card.
You could always pump him too. You could run
true.
him in a red-green strategy where you just have giant growths and giant growth like cards, and they are always used to pump Marton.
Yeah, or even sticking with white, you could use
protections.
Righteousness. It will only be for blocking, but
oh yeah. You can give him protection. You can enchant him with that 1 protection, or
with that
protection
that
could be
you
used
can
for
change colors on it every
Yeah,
turn.
yeah.
It's like a ward, right?
Yes,
Chromatic
yes, yes,
ward
yes.
maybe, or
Oh, that's a good idea.
yeah, that's good.
I want to
You
make a
can
red-white
throw
Marton deck now.
Fling in this deck.
Yeah, Fling.
Fling would be a good one. I had
Something
started to
big.
make a red-white Fling Righteousness deck, so I think maybe I'll overlay that onto this idea. Put some reconnaissance and Martin's. Why is that so funny, Steve?
It's just funny that it had to be with righteousness. I don't know.
It's 7 for 1 mana. I
I
mean,
know.
if you're gonna hatred for, what is it, 5 mana?
I know.
Righteousness Fling is only 3.
Okay, I get
it. I get it. Settle down.
You could also you could put a Hearth Charm or two in the deck.
I don't remember that one.
The Hearth Charm. It's because nobody plays it, I don't think.
Yeah, the poor charms. I always want to try to use them. I like the idea so much.
I must have typed in Earth Charm. Hearth Charm. The last ability of the charm can actually get some use with Marton. It's 1 red instant from Visions. Choose one. Destroy target artifact creature, or all attacking creatures get +1/+0 until end of turn, or target creature with power 2 or less is unblockable this turn. So you send your Marton and the other creatures attacking. You make Marton unblockable. He gets 3/1, doesn't die in combat. The other ones get the pump. You can do the same thing again next turn. So Marton's cool, man. I'm into him. I'm liking the possibilities with red-white. You can even go the Righteousness Fling route if you wanted to. Not terrible. The other Ice Age creature they talked about as a commander. We talked about this one a long time ago. I actually bought 4. I bought it a long time ago when we came back into Magic.
Me too. I jumped on this one right away. I was like, this will be a good commander for Old Border.
This card's pretty sweet. Apparently, it's a hated Old Border commander. Apparently, well, this is what the command zone tells me. When you play Mariki, you become a target.
I understand.
People don't like their shit stolen.
Yeah.
Mariki is 1 white, 1 blue, 1 black, 1/1 summon legend. Does not untap in your untap phase. You can tap it to gain control of target creature. You lose control of that creature if you lose control of Mariki. If Mariki leaves play or becomes untapped, bury the creature. Gather a rating of 3.933. Current market price $4.02. Always fun to steal creatures. An added benefit of this card is that, yeah, you can actually use it to kill opposing creatures. It's not just about stealing. Kill. You need to untap. You need to untap her, but you can twiddle her if you want to go super old school. There's obviously better shit. Command Zone mentioned Seedborn Muse, which you can't use if Mariki is your commander, because Seedborn Muse is a green card. Seedborn Muse is one of the muses. I believe it's 3 colorless, 2 green. It's a creature. Let me pull this up real quick.
It's a creature.
It is 3 colorless, 2 green. It's 2/4. And you untap all permanents you control during each player's untap step. So, come on, you're playing a multiplayer game. You get to tap and untap a Mariki every time it goes to a new player.
Yeah, that'd be nasty.
You just kill everybody's shit. So I could see why they want to kill you.
Multiple times per turn. Or per round. Yeah, Quirion Ranger, if you're going to throw green in.
Well, yeah.
Use that to untap her.
Yeah. And then I was trying to think of other stuff too. This is a card I kind of forgot about, but you could use Puppet Strings.
Interesting.
Artifact from Tempest, 3 colorless, pay 2 colorless, tap Puppet Strings to tap or untap target creature. Not an expensive card. It is shooting up in price for some reason right now. Puppet Strings.
I don't think I knew about that card. Art's kind of neat too.
It is pretty cool. So those are 2 creatures from Ice Age. They're Ice Age rares. They're mentioned on the command zone. They could be potential Old Border commanders. They could also just be cool cards to build decks around. Next Ice Age rare I want to talk about is a card that I never played, but I really like. And I think I'm going to play it soon. I'm thinking about what kind of cards I could build for like the Alice format, Ice Age Alliances. I think this would be a good one to build around because I've been building a lot of aggro lately, a lot of green, some red. This is a perfect card for an aggro red-green deck. It is Stormbind. Has a gatherer rating at 4.115. Current market price 22 cents, so it's major budget card. It's sweet art. It's one colorless, one red, one green enchantment. Pay 2 colorless, discard a card at random from your hand to have Stormbind deal 2 damage to target creature or player. So this is a good source of repetitive damage when not a lot of those existed. If you're running red-green aggro, it can be used as a finisher just to push through the last few points of damage. I love that you can target creatures or opponents. So, there's a lot of times where I don't mind paying, like discarding a forest or something to get rid of somebody's queer on elf or queer on ranger so they can't, do crazy shit at the beginning of the game with their ranger. You could pair this with land tax in formats where land tax is not banned. You could use it to get cards that you want in your graveyard into your graveyard. I haven't seen this, but can you do a red-green madness build or something?
Oh yeah, okay.
You definitely do a red-green threshold build of some sort. It gives more fuel to your Lavamancer if you want to run a Stormbind with a Lavamancer. I like it. Really good, but also not overly powered. There's nothing like broken about this card. It just does cool shit. I'm a fan of Stormbind.
Yeah, I'm liking it too. I would try this. I'm worried a little bit about the mana, but yeah, I think like you said, just in the deck where you want that flexibility and maybe you have extra mana laying around and yeah, I'm down with this.
It's just a fair card. It's a cheap card. It's a nice budget brew. And you could potentially do some unexpected things with it if you ran it in a deck with Madness or Threshold.
Yeah, I like the madness idea.
We got a few more rares that I want to talk about.
Okay.
This is another cheap enchantment that I want to brew around that I've never brewed around before. Has a rating of gather rating of 4.064, current market price of 91 cents, so you can get them for under $1. It is Hecatomb. Is it supposed to be Hecatomb? One colorless, 2 black. Enchantment. When Hecatomb or Hecatomb comes into play, sacrifice 4 creatures. Pay 0. Tap target swamp you control to have Hecatomb deal 1 damage to target creature or player. So there are some rulings on Gatherer regarding this card, all from 2004. One is if you have less than 4 creatures, you do not partially sacrifice. You pay 4 creatures or none. So this is not an easy thing to like get out very quickly. You need to have 4 creatures to sack to it. It's all or nothing. The sacrifice is done as a triggered ability just after it enters the battlefield. It is not done on casting. You choose whether to sacrifice creatures or not on resolution. If not, then you sacrifice Hecatomb. You can choose to not sacrifice creatures if you no longer control this card on resolution.
Oh.
So, I mean, there's some limitations to it. You can't do crazy broken things really fast with it because you have to have 4 creatures to sack on the board already. But if you get to that point, you're at a point where you can do 2 to 4 damage every turn to any target as long as this stays on the board. That's a big if. The problem arises when you sacrifice your creatures to put Hecatomb on the board and somebody disenchants it or something.
And now you're using your swamps to do the damage, so you're going to be unable to cast too much.
Other things, yeah.
But it is definitely good to have there, like the last card to pick off things you don't want.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, it's another fair. It's an interesting, fun card to brew around, but also very fair. This is the unbroken 3 casting cost black enchantment from Ice Age. Yeah. It's no Necro, but I think it's pretty cool. It also requires a swamp, not just black mana. So black has, ways to do crazy ramp things. You
Yeah,
can't
true.
do that with Hecatomb to push through a ton of damage. You have to tap your swamp. It's fair and balanced.
Mhm.
Kind of what I like about it.
And you can finish people off with it, but probably only if you're like close to killing them already or like doing pretty well already.
That's true. So it might just be like a win more card.
Yeah, maybe, but like it also can kill creatures, so it's not just that finisher. It can get you to that point, help get you to that point.
Maybe for black prison style or something.
Something kind of slow.
Next Ice Age rare. A card that used to be in lots of control style decks. Also something kind of slow. Blinking Spirit has a gather rating of 4.213, current market price 34 cents, so we're definitely into the budget stuff now. We've been in the budget stuff for a little while.
I remember this being kind of a big deal back in Ice Age. Am I wrong? Were people excited about it?
It was, and I mean it's in major competitive tournament decks from this era.
I might be having trouble separating it from Thundering Spirit as far as white spirits that people liked back then.
Yeah, two very different things. I mean, Thunder Spirit was definitely loved in White Weenie, but
Yeah.
like
I just couldn't remember if I was just thinking about that or if people did like this back then, because I think they did. I thought it was a hot card.
you're not. Blinking Spirit was like a really strong control card.
Okay.
3 colorless, 1 white, summon Blinking Spirit. It's 2/2. It does not fly, even though it looks like it should fly. Pay a colorless, return Blinking Spirit to owner's hand. So this is what I remember of it. There were some comments on Gather. This was posted by Scumbling1 on the 31st of May 2011. This used to be amazing with combat damage on the stack, so maybe still amazing,
yeah. Okay.
maybe still amazing in middle school.
So it can do its 2 damage and go back to your hand back then, yeah.
You could activate it for free after damage was on the stack and bring it back to your hand. Now somebody responded to that. Oh, actually, so that wasn't originally by Scumling1. He's responding to somebody who said that. He says, amazing, try amusing. While it was hard to kill, Blinking Spirit was still costly even for its day. It was only when they shaved 1 mana off and gave it flying in the form of Fleeting Image, which must be a modern card, that people really played it. Now, Scumbling1 is wrong. So I was gonna, it's
Right.
not true that people didn't play this back in the day. It's in competitive decks from this era. It's amazing in the right type of deck. It's amazing in a control deck that can build up lots of mana, which actually became easier to do when the next set they were going to talk about. No, not the next set, not Homelands. The set after that, Homelands, when that came out. These slow, grindy control decks got Thawing Glaciers. So if they could hold off their opponent, they could build up quite a strong mana base that would allow them to continually play even high casting cost cards. I mean, maybe I'm wrong and Scumbling1 is right, but like I don't think I'm wrong. Like Blinking Spirit, it's not like it was destroying everything in town like Necro. But it was, you just said it. You remembered it being like a valid competitive card, kind of a big deal back in the day.
Also in the same way that you did, I thought people using it in control decks where they like winter orbed you down or something, and they were just able to afford the 4 mana for it every turn.
It's a recurring creature that isn't cheap to play, but it's also not prohibitively costly to play over and over, and it was really good in control decks.
This might be fun with like the familiars that reduce creature casting cost or reduce spell casting cost.
Yeah, that would be that would be a pretty good use of those. This would be a pretty good thing to bring back over and over again. But it was better when damage was on the stack. Regarding that, I'm still having trouble figuring out like exactly how things work because I know it's not that confusing, but I'm not that smart. It's also that I just remember how things worked back in the day for us, but I never knew if we played correctly back in the day or if it was just our own rules.
Yeah.
Here's somebody, they asking about Blinking Spirit back in 2014 on the mtgsalvation.com forum. He had some of the questions that I have now coming back to Magic and realizing that damage is no longer on the stack. Hello all, I have a few questions about abilities on attacks. From what I heard, if there's no blocking creature during attack or it is removed from play, it does not block the creature originally set to block. I understand that the rules changed a bit, mainly in 2010. I want to verify. Specifically, I'll use Blinking Spirit as a reference. Some cases. 1, I attack with a general 3/3 creature. Opponent blocks and removes Blinking Spirit from play prior to damage declaration. What happens? So I think what happens is the 3/3 creature is blocked, but the 3/3 creature does not die and the Blinking Spirit comes back to hand. Is that right? The answer is the 3/3 creature deals. I think that should say neither. The 3/3 creature neither deals nor takes combat damage because its blocker is not on the field anymore and it doesn't have trample. So I think that's what's true. Is this what you believe too? You can remove the Blinking Spirit back to your hand.
Yeah, and then just nothing, no damage is dealt, but the
no damage is dealt. I would prefer this scenario with a 2/2 creature because back when damage was on the stack, Blinking Spirit would do 2 damage to the creature and it would die.
Right.
But the Blinking Spirit will come back to your hand, I think. Scenario 2, I attack with a general 3/3 creature. Opponent blocks and removes Blinking Spirit from play after damage declaration. What happens?
You're not allowed to.
You can't do it any longer.
Yeah, it would be dead.
Your opponent cannot do that. Combat damage is not put in the stack anymore. So once the combat damage is dealt, it's dealt and Blinking Spirit would die. So before 2010, you could still bounce it back to your hand, right? Damage would be declared, but it would go on the stack, and before it resolved, you could bounce the Blinking Spirit back. Okay, so I think I'm getting it. And then this is something that I forgot, but you and I ran into this once at your kitchen
trample
table.
Thing is interesting, yeah.
About a year ago. I attack with a general 3/3 creature with trample. Opponent blocks and removes Blinking Spirit from play. What happens? Your opponent is dealt 3 damage. Your 3/3 trampling dude is still blocked, and the total damage their blockers would be able to stand to 0 as there's none, so it can assign all damage to your player. So if you block a trampler with something that you could bounce back or that you could sack and put into the graveyard, the damage still has to go somewhere, and because it tramples, it goes to the opponent.
Interesting. Right? Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, a little bit about how to play things like Blinking Spirit that I'm still trying to make sure I get right all the time. What comes after Blinking Spirit? This is the last rare that I wanted to highlight from Ice Age. And it's a weird one. Oh, you see what I'm doing here, Alex? It's a weird one. It's There's Weirding. There's Weirding is 3 colorless, 1 blue enchantment. It's another long one. All players play with the cards in their hands face up on the table. Whenever any player draws a card, any other player may pay 2 life to force the drawing player to discard that card. Effects that prevent or redirect damage cannot be used to counter this loss of life. Has a gather rating of 4.321. It's another cheap card for a Bruin, under $1. It's 80 cents right now, market price. And basically, this card can be a lock if you're running a deck with life gain. It comes in at number 10 on Morrow's list of best card designs in Ice Age. What does he say about it? He says, one of my favorite parts about the card is that it's a very sneaky Johnny card. It has a sense of power without a lot of direction. What I mean by that is that most strong Johnny cards push you down an obvious path, not Zer's Weirding. Don't totally understand where he's coming from there, because it seems to me like Zer's Weirding pushes you down an obvious path, even though there are other things you can do with it. Life gain just seems like the very obvious path. So I was thinking, what else can you do with this that Mario might be thinking about when he's saying there's no obvious path? You could, I guess, run it in decks where you don't mind if cards are in your graveyard, right?
Yeah.
Reanimate, Madness, Threshold. So, okay, maybe your opponent doesn't want it in your hand. because you can do things with it in your hand, but if you can also do things within your graveyard, go ahead, pay that 2 life. I'll pull it from my graveyard. But I don't really see that. Life gain seems like the obviously better route to go with this, but you could, I guess, put it in reanimate shells, madness shells.
And I mean, it's gonna synergize with anything where like seeing their hand is beneficial to you. So like if you're playing a deck with discard in it, you know, now their hand's always open. That's not like a real strong combo or anything, but it's one kind of aspect of the deck, maybe.
It is true. Those are the last of the rares that I really wanted to talk about. I guess we got some honorable mentions, some interesting cards from Ice Age. There was the Lurgoyf, which we talked about recently, so I'm not going to focus on that again.
Yeah, I just figured we'd skip that because we've talked about it and everyone knows it. But back then it was really popular. People went bananas about Lurgoyf, huge creature for 4 mana.
Star. Things from your graveyard. Well, plus star for each creature in your graveyard. Is that what it is? I believe so.
Yeah, and the toughness I think is 1+, right? So that it
yes
is always alive.
There's a card that I'd never played back in the day, but I've looked at it recently, and I actually thought about putting it in my commander deck, but it didn't make it in. Alter a Bone, not bad. It's a limited survival of the fittest. So it was some tutor ability before green really had any tutor ability. 1 white, 1 green sorcery. Sacrifice a creature to look through your library for a creature card. Put that card into your hand. After showing it to all other players, reshuffle your library afterwards. So
pretty fun. It's weird that it's white and green. It's weird that it's called Altar of Bone and not an artifact. One thing I did learn about this is that you can't do that more than once with it. You can't sacrifice 3 creatures to look for 3 creatures.
Yeah.
It's 1 and only 1.
It's a one use survival of the fittest, essentially. For 1 white and 1 green. Sacrifice 1 creature and look through the library. Anything else that sticks out? Anything else you remembered?
I don't think so.
That was about it. I think that was about it from the rares. Oh, you said something about Jester's Mask earlier. I always remember this as the other Jester's card, which I never used. And there was some excitement around it, but I think it was just because it was linked in people's minds to Jester's Cap. And it had an unusual ability too, but I can't remember what it was. 5 colorless, comes into play tapped. You can pay 1 colorless and tap it, sacrifice it to look through target opponent's hand and library. Okay, again, so you get to search your opponent's shit. Give that player a new hand of as many cards as he or she had before, reshuffle the remaining cards afterwards.
Yeah.
Not nearly as strong, but just as goofy.
Well, I mean,
goofy, actually.
I think the effect could be just as strong. It's also 5 mana and it comes into play tapped,
And it comes into play tapped.
So it's slower and clunkier. But I mean, deciding what your opponent's hand is can be devastating.
It could be, but not as devastating as often as like being able to pull out their combo pieces or their win cons and stuff.
Right.
I think as often. Also, like sometimes you're going to get this out late in the game. Like you said, 5 casting costs and it comes into play tapped. Give them a new hand of as many cards as he or she had before. So I mean, they might only have like 1 card in their hand.
Yeah.
What if they have none?
Yeah, it's only good if they have like a fairly decent sized hand, and then you like stack it full of lands so they can't do it.
The cap, at least you always get to take something.
Yeah. And I feel like, for this to get anywhere near as strong, you'd have to be at least 3 cards in their hand, you know what I mean? So that you're having like a 3-card effect the way Jester's Cap does.
Yeah. Anyways, those are the rares that we wanted to talk about from Ice Age. Now I want to go over a couple historic decks from around the time Ice Age was first released. I was looking around to remind myself what was making an impact on the tournament scene back when the set was released. I found a couple that were interesting to me. One of them, there are some more, we're going to talk about some more decks from around this era when we get to alliances, but a lot of the ones when I was looking at Ice Age cards, like they were very much alliances and Ice Age focused, with mostly like alliances cards as their power cards. So I was really looking for some that like really highlighted Ice Age over alliances. And I found this Erhnam-Geddon deck. Everybody knows the old Erhnam-Geddon strategy. This one was piloted by Olle Rade in Worlds 1996 in Seattle. He made the top 4 in Worlds 1996. And I actually, when I saw this, I was like, oh, I didn't remember this deck from the time. But when we were talking about SternR the other day, I was like, oh, it made Erhnam-Geddon even better. So this is like a standard Erhnam-Geddon deck. You have your elves to ramp. He didn't go extra elves. We talked about how when Findhorn elves came out, now you could have more than 4 mana elves. He just mixed it up 2 and 2. It had your strong run drops at the time, your Savannah Lions, 2/1 for 1 was a big thing back in this day. You had your strong 2-drops at the time, your Elvis Archers, your Spectral Bears. No Quirion Rangers to untap these Spectral Bears, but still they're decent. You had your Whirling Dervishes.
Popular.
And you had your Erhnam. You had your Erhnam as a beater.
Why
and then
not?
For white, what are you going to say?
Why not any Birds of Paradise? Do you just think the offensive nature of the elves?
That's my guess. I don't know that for a fact, but I'm guessing sometimes you just...
I mean, it's probably the only answer, but...
You just want to push through and a little bit of extra damage.
I'd want to be able to make a little extra white mana with the Birds of Paradise.
White removal. Swords of Plowshares, Divine Offering, Disenchant, and you had your Geddons and your Balance, your white power cards. Not much Ice Age here, so why am I bringing it up? Because we do see a Zuron Orb. This made an established archetype, Erhnam-Geddon, even stronger. You could ramp out, you could blow up the land, and you could sack the land that you're going to blow up anyways to the orb to gain some life. I also like that you could use the orb as like precision land destruction to get around the potential downside of the Erhnam. You know, one thing about the Erhnam, which doesn't always come into play, but sometimes is a pain in the ass, is that when this creature's on the board, you have to give a target non-wall creature an opponent controls Forest Walk.
Mm-hmm.
But if you blow up your forests, then you don't care about the Forest Walk. And you can still use the Findhorn and the Land War Elves for green mana, and every green card in this deck, except for the Dervish, just requires 1 green. He's a land tax in here too. This could further feed the orb.
And there's land tax.
I mean, the land tax is great with orb. I shouldn't just say, also land tax. Yeah. You could sack your land and then you get 3 more planes.
Mm-hmm.
Sack them, get 3 more planes. Each time you're thinning out your deck. How many planes does he have in the deck? Well, he can't do that many times because he only has 2 planes in the deck. Well, I'm kind of surprised by it. During the upkeep, if an opponent controls more land than you may search your library and remove 3 basic land cards. Yeah. Jeez. Why was I thinking just planes all of a sudden?
You're probably thinking of Tithe.
Yes. So you got 9. You got 9 okay. You can go for. So yeah, good. But I like this deck because I always loved Erhnam-Geddon. I love Erhnams. I love Geddons. I love Balance. And I like that the Zuron Orb makes it even stronger. I like that Ice Age added something to this archetype.
Yeah.
Second deck I wanted to talk about. This is more of what I think of as an Ice Age deck. It is strictly Ice Age and Fallen Empires. It's a red-green control deck piloted by one Henry Stern. I forgot to change this to visual grid. I think I forgot to change my mountains to proper printings also. Oh my God. I got to change these real quick. Switch printing to Ice Age. Filter sets. There are 100,000 land arts.
I saw like an infographic that said like something like almost 50% of like land arts have been printed in like the last couple years.
I saw that for full land arts. Is that what you saw? Full land
Yeah, yeah,
arts?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then it was a bunch of the conversations you see over and over again, how when everything's special, nothing's special. And I don't know. There's always going to be something that's rare. They're not reprinted everything to hell. And also,
Yeah.
what will happen? Here's what will happen if they start reprinting a lot of stuff. Everything will drop in price, but the original will still retain some degree of its value, a significant degree of its value, if it's something that people really wanted for some reason other than just hoarding in closets to potentially resell later on. I mean, this is how a lot of collectibles work. You can still have valuable collectibles even with reprints, just not to the same extent as you see in Magic the Gathering, and the market isn't as ripe for manipulation. If you don't have the printers, the producers of the product, maintaining artificial scarcity. I've talked about this before in the context of book collecting. You can go to Barnes and Noble right now and pick up a copy of All Quiet on the Western Front, or For Whom the Bell Tolls, or whatever. It doesn't devalue the price of the original printing of those books. People still seek them out. They still collect them. They still go for hundreds or thousands of dollars. You know what I'm saying? You know. Anyways, apparently this is something we weren't around for. But when the full land arts came out originally, they were like big deals. And I think they were something that they were actually given out at some stages for like judge prizes. I don't know anything about how judge stuff works, but I did see some complaint about how these were given out for prizes as prizes to judges for helping out during tournaments. And they were so desirable that often the judges could like sell them to make some money for all the time that they took out of their lives to judge these tournaments. And since full art lands are being printed more often, the prices are dropping, they're not worth much, and they're still giving them out sometimes as gifts to the judges, but the judges can't sell them to recoup any of their costs anymore because nobody cares about them, stuff like that. Anyway. Full land arts. Apparently they've been printed like crazy, and they didn't used to be printed like crazy. But back to Red Green Control, piloted by Henry Stern. He ran this deck in 1995 at Worlds Seattle. It came in third, fourth place, tied for third, fourth place. I love this deck. I like that it makes good use of some Fallen Empires and Ice Age cards. You got your Orcish Lumberjacks, which we talked about. This can be used to ramp out your Shivan, to pump your Shivan, to fuel your Fireball. It can also be used to ramp out an Org. We didn't talk about Org because we haven't talked about Fallen Empires.
Yeah, I do remember some people trying to play Org back in the day.
Some people did it. Henry Stern ran it in Worlds in 1995. It's 3 colorless, 2 red. Summon Org. I think it was the first Org in the game. 6/6 Trampler. Org may not attack if opponent controls an untapped creature of power greater than 2. Org cannot be assigned to block any creature of power greater than 2. A lot of times, especially back in this day, by the time you get out a 5 casting cost creature, your opponent's probably going to have something with power greater than 2 out on the board. So it wasn't always that great. But you could ramp them out faster with things like Orcish Lumberjack. You also got some removal in this deck too. 4 lightning bolts, 3 incinerates, 4 fireballs. So you can blast the opponent's creature off the board and still come through with a 6/6. He's got some Joko Hops in here, 2 Joko Hops. So this ramping shit out, something you could do after you blow everything up with your Joko Hop. So it's good to have some ramp ability in the form of some elves and Orcish Lumberjack. I like the interaction. He runs a Zuran Orb in here too. I like the interaction of Zuran Orb, channel, Fireball. Stack some lands to the orb, gain life, feed that life in the channel, feed that mana into a Fireball. So it adds a little something to the old channel Fireball combo. Let me go through the basics of this deck. 10 creatures, 2 Llanowar Elves, 3 Orcish Lumberjacks, 2 Orgs, 1 Shivan, 2 Dervishes. Sorceries, you got your channel, you got 4 fireball, you got 2 Joko Hops. Instants, you have removal. 1 crumble, 3 incinerates, 4 lightning bolts. Artifacts, you got 4 black vice, 4 howling mines, 3 Zern orbs. Enchantments, you got 3 stormbinds. I like the howling mine to provide tinder for the stormbind.
I almost mentioned that we were talking about Stormbind, and then I thought it was not worth mentioning.
It is worth mentioning,
But
I
it
think.
would be great. And that's why I was like, yeah, I like seeing the Black Vice too. Stocking up their hands. I would do this too with like a Mana Barbs thing, my red-green Mana Barbs archetype with Stormbind. That'd be good. Howling Mines, Black Vices.
You could Joko Hops, you could ramp out. You could Joko Hops, you could play Black Vice, then ramp out a Howling Mind. They're in trouble.
That's true.
They're in trouble.
Hands all jammed up with stuff they can't cast.
All jammed up. Get your 4 strips. This man's a gentleman. He knows to play 4 strips. 7 mountains, 4 Complacent forests, 7 forests, 2 Dwarven ruins. Here we got another Fallen Empires card. You were talking about Fallen Empires lands that are never played. This isn't actually even one of the terrible storage counter ones. This is just one that's just generally not great. They come into play tapped. You tap them for 1 colored mana, or you could sacrifice them to add 2 of that color mana to your mana pool. Okay. Little temporary burst of ramp after coming into play tapped.
Yeah.
But I like this. This is a very old school deck, and it runs some old school combos, Channel Fireball, Howling Mine, Black Vice, and uses some new cards from Ice Age to make them just a little bit better.
Yeah. This feels very familiar to me.
Very familiar. Looks very fun to play. Probably win some games with this. I'd probably have a 42 win percent rate with this. 42% win rate with red-green, controlled by Henry Stern. Okay, Alex, I think that brings us to the end of our Ice Age review for now. Maybe we'll come back to Ice Age at some point in the future. Don't know. But at least for now, I'm wiping my hands of the Ice Age. We're not done with the Ice Age block, but we're done with the Ice Age for now. I'm going to go on to segment 2 of today's podcast. Alex, segment 2 of today's podcast is the Old Mage MTG Commander Corner. We're going back to the Commander Corner. What are we doing during today's Commander Corner? Well, we're doing what we usually do during the Commander Corner. We're building a Commander deck. Alex and I built our first Commander decks on the show in 2023. Here in 2024, we're building our second Commander decks. Mine is, I think, going to be old frame only. We will see. I might have to go into the new frame card pool. With this year's deck, I am building a Atogatog. So you can see that it is an Atog focused deck. Atogatog is 5 colors, 1 mana of each color. Atog Legend 5/5, sacrifice an Atog. Atogatog gets +X until end of turn, where X is the sacrificed Atog's power. What's in the deck so far? Not much. I just started it last week. I have an Atogatog, I have an Atog, of course, and then I have my dual lands. When I build this deck officially in paper, I may or may not proxy these. I might just put in like the next best version. What's the next best version of a dual land in old frame? Not entirely sure, but I think it's probably the cards from Invasion, I believe, that come into play tapped. But then you can tap them for 1 of each color, like Coastal Tower comes into play tap, but you can tap it for a white or a blue. So it's essentially a slower dual land. A tap land, I think the kids called them when they first came out. I'm still thinking about how creature heavy I want to go with this. Do I want to just run Atogs and a few clones? Do I want to run Atogs and clones and then get into the modern card pool and bring in more changelings? Do I want to go light on Atogs and then build a 5-color good stuff deck? Don't know yet. I have plenty of time to figure that out. What am I going to add today? I'm going to add another Atog. I don't know exactly how many Atogs I'm going to add, but I'm going to add at least probably all the old border Atogs. I think there are 11 of them. I think there are 12 total Atogs, 1 being new frame, which is Atogatog, or probably just Megatog. Not going to add Megatog today. I'm going to instead add Oratog. Oratog is an old bordered Atog from Time Shift, but originally from Tempest, I believe. So that's what I'm going to add. I'm going to add the original Tempest printing. Oratog is 1 colorless, 1 white, 1/2. Summon Atog. Sacrifice an enchantment. Oratog gets +2/+2 until end of turn. What enchantments am I going to feed to Oratog? I don't know. Probably a lot of different enchantments, potentially. Maybe Conspiracy. Who knows? Got to decide if I want to add that. But I'm definitely going to be feeding Rancor.
Yeah, that's
to the Oratog. So here we go. What are my win cons going to be for this deck? I don't know. It could be commander damage with the Atogatog pumped up all big, attacking with them. Damn it. It could be commander damage with the pumped up Atogatog and I fling them. I could pump them up and Rancor them so I can trample for damage. But I could also win with an Atogatog, an Oratog Rancor combo. Here's a potential win con. You Rancor the Oratog. You give it +2/+0 and trample. You sacrifice the Rancor to the Oratog to give the Oratog +2/+2. Rancor goes to your graveyard from play, then comes back into your hand. If you have an untapped forest, you tap the forest, Rancor the Oratog again, give it +2/+0 and trample. Sack it. You can repeat this for as many forests as you have and build up the Oratog and trample through with a shit ton of damage.
Yeah, that's pretty nasty.
So I'm putting the Oratog Rancor combo into my currently old frame only Atogatog deck, which is named Adeckadeck. Atogatog Adeckadeck. And that's it. That's it for this week. Alex still has to choose his commander. Alex, are you going to go old frame again? Or are you still unsure? Okay.
Almost certain. See.
Old frame commander solely or old frame deck?
I might do like, old frame deck with one new commander, just so that I have like choices for my commander. But I think I'm going to try to keep it mostly old frame or all old frame.
Mostly old frame. And that's it. That's it for episode 72 of the Old Mage MTG podcast. I want to say, everybody, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for listening to the end. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you for clicking that like button if you did that. Thank you for any of your comments if you commented. Thank you for subscribing if you subscribed to our channel. If you didn't subscribe to our channel yet, subscribe to the channel, man. It's free. It helps us out. It feeds the algorithm. It helps us grow. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify if you prefer the audio-only format. Alex, do you have anything to say to the listeners before we go?
Tune in next week. We're going to talk about Homelands, right?
Oh, man, everybody's fucking pumped about love that. Everybody's favorite set. We're over here struggling to figure out what we even talk about.
Yeah, we probably won't talk about that for too long. I'll probably have a follow-up about that Fruity Pebbles stuff we looked at earlier, too. I wanted to talk about that a little more.
Okay, I got a couple cards in mind too for Homelands, and if we don't have much to say about those two cards, we can talk about Spectral Bears more.
Oh, sure.
People love Spectral Bears. Okay, see you next week.
All right, thanks.